I am Johnny Massacre and welcome to my show. Tonight, my video game review of Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. Who is with me? Give me a hell yeah! I'm so tired today, but I got to make a show for you. So excuse the bags under my eyes and my eyes, which are kind of closing, because I've got to review this video game that I played recently. Now, I think I'm in quite a good position to review this game because I played it for 36 hours straight. Yes, I did a 36-hour live stream. I cannot believe we completed it, and we did it. But we did it, mama. And so I got near the end of the game, I guess, probably 75% of the way through. And I absorbed everything in one sitting. There weren't any breaks where I kind of forgot what was going on. I just experienced the whole game in one big session. So in light of that, let me talk a little bit about this game. So it came out in 2019. I'm a little bit late to the party, but there's a lot of hardcore fans of Sekiro out there. I believe 5 million people bought the game, and what with the worldwide phenomenon of the game known as Elden Ring, which is made by the same developers as Sekiro, known as FromSoft, I think it's a good time to revisit this game. I loved Elden Ring, and so I wanted to play one of the other games in the series, and that's why I started playing this. It is a ninja game. And the game contains themes of immortality and life and death. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the mood of the movie Prometheus by Ridley Scott. The themes of that, where they sort of think about creation and destruction and how things aren't always as black and white as you would assume. People want to live forever, for example. They want immortality. That's what they wanted in the movie Prometheus. They went into the far depths of space to try to attain that. But actually, there's some kind of folly in that, wanting to live forever, these binary things which are just impossible, and in searching that out actually could lead to your destruction and a lot of chaos, and all of those themes are in this game, which I really liked. You are a shinobi and you're known as Wolf, and I think you were just adopted by this dude called Owl. And like a lot of From Software games, the plot is not really that clear, and it starts to unfold as you play through the game, and there's a lot of lore, and that motivates you to actually play through the game and try to complete it in totality, because if you do that, you kind of unveil the story, and it's always a little bit ambiguous, these games. But you are an adopted kid known as Wolf, a shinobi, and your dad is called Al, your adoptive father, and you are assigned to protect this little kid called Kuro. You got to protect him. He's known as the divine heir of the dragon, and he has dragon blood. So the themes of immortality seem to resonate from this kid. He's got dragon blood, so it means he's going to live forever. So people want to get this kid in order to get immortality. And I think he got immortality from somewhere called the Fountainhead Place. So there are these waters. If you drink it or if you're near it, you get immortality. And I think Kuro's linked to that somehow, and that's how he has immortality. And so people are trying to get his blood, and they're trying to get this water. And the water pooled in the depths of Ashina. Ashina is the place where this game is set, and where the water from the fountainhead that's supposed to grant immortality pooled, it started to stagnate. So it's not all good immortality. Actually, it can go bad. As certain as night follows day, immortality can be followed by hell. And so where the water stagnated, the various creatures that were near it became corrupted, became immortal, and as we've already discussed, being immortal isn't actually that much of a good thing. If you think about it, if you're alive forever, you're probably going to go crazy, you're probably going to go mad, especially with warriors or kind of aggressive creatures. If you have a lifetime of just killing people and you're immortal, you're eventually going to be corrupted and you're going to become a devil. So those are all the kind of themes of the story. It's hard to really follow exactly what was going on, like most From Software games. But immortality, heaven and hell, and decay and corruption are massive themes of this game as a shinobi. And it seems that anyone who's touched by this dragon's blood, who lives forever, will eventually become corrupt in the game. Fancy that. You thought living forever would be cool, but it isn't, basically. So that's kind of what the story revolves around. And there's also some kind of infection in the game called dragon rot. This was expanded on in the later From Software game Elden Ring, where they had the scarlet rot. And I think dragon rot comes from this life-giving water. Everything infected by the water ends up going mad, or you end up with this kind of disease called dragon rot. I think the antagonist of this game is a guy called Genichiro, And at the beginning of the game, you face him like a lot of From Software games. You face a really tough boss at the beginning that you're not supposed to be able to kill, and he cuts off your arm. That's the inciting incident. A bit like Luke Skywalker with Darth Vader. After that, you're locked into the mission, and your life has been forever changed. And then you go on your own journey of discovery, and hopefully at the end you can find some kind of resolution. I'm guessing in this game at the end, because I didn't complete it, he's probably going to end up dying. Hopefully, ironically, you want to die to be freed from the hell of immortality. And Genichiro is a real bastard. He's this samurai. I think he's a samurai. And he's got this huge bow on his back. It's gigantic. The bow is as big as a tree, which just looks kind of cool. And that's basically what the story is of the game. So you're protecting this little kid, Kuro, and all these people want to get him in order to take advantage of his dragon blood and use him, I think, to create some kind of immortal army. And it's set against the backdrop of war. The game is definitely influenced by Tenchu. I'm old enough to remember a game called Tenchu on the PS1, which was a ninja game, and it was amazing. It had stealth action. You're walking on the rooftops and stuff, and that was one of my favorite games ever. It was wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. I remember playing that, completing it, and never playing it again, but it was a great, great game. And I have to say, though, it doesn't feel exactly... It's obviously better than Tenchu, because Tenchu is limited. It's really old now. It's dated. But Tenchu felt more satisfying at the time. The stealth felt more... If the stealth was a bigger part of the game. This game is all about stealth, but Tenchu did the stealth better, and it was more satisfying sneaking around and cutting people's throats and watching the blood splash out. It was more satisfying in Tenchu, but the stealth in this game still is pretty good. Now, as for the graphics, they're a little bit dated. It's funny, 3 years is actually quite a long time in terms of video game graphical advancement, and the game is quite murky looking, and there isn't really that great a sense of depth. In Elden Ring, the later game by From Software, the sense of depth is great. You see sweeping plains and meadows and mountains and all kinds of things, and everything has its place in the world, and you have a real sense of the distance from A to B to C to Z. But in this game, it all seems a little bit flat, as if even though it's 3D, it all looks like it's on a flat picture, and there's not that much of a sense of depth. And I think it's something to do with the shadows. Even though this game is called Shadows Die Twice, well, I guess the shadows did die off, because in this game you don't really get the sense of perspective that the shadows should give you. So I think it's something to do with the lighting and the shadows, but it doesn't look incredible graphically in terms of just, how to say, in terms of just being impressed. You know, when you look at a game that's really graphically impressive, it kind of blows your mind. I didn't get that from Sekiro, but I did feel the design, the aesthetic was amazing. So whoever illustrated it and created the general look of the world, which were obviously created from storyboards and stuff like that, it looks freaking awesome. I live in Japan, and it's legit. So I've been to plenty of temples and shrines out here, and Tenchu has all that kind of stuff. It's set in the Sengoku period, which I believe is in the 1400s. And it has the kind of wooden, old school Japanese houses with thatched roofs, the temples, the shrines. There's a lot of religious influences. There's a lot of Buddhist influences in this game. And it looks beautiful. The sound is wicked. The clanking of the blades, blade on blade, the shurikens kind of whooshing and whipping through the air, the monster sounds, the growls and groans. The sounds are awesome in this game. The music is wicked. There's one particular part later on in the game that I really liked, where you're trying to get inside this old school thatched Japanese cottage or house type thing, but you can't quite get onto the upper level. So you have to go around the outside of it, trying to scale trees, trying to work your way up there. And someone in the house is playing this Japanese instrument, this solitary Japanese instrument. It's like a wind instrument. It's like some kind of flute. Maybe it's a shakuhachi, I think they call it, something like that. And it was so moody and brilliant. And I just thought, why couldn't there have been more of that in this game, and more of that traditional Japanese music actually being part of the game? You hear it and you have to find the sound source. I wanted a bit more of that. That came later in the game. I wanted more shamisen and koto, the other traditional Japanese instruments. But then because that scene is isolated, it really stood out for me and was great. So the sound is awesome. The music's awesome. The sound effects are wicked. All that shit's really good. The dialogue is actually famously bad for a From Software game. It's nowhere near as good as Elden Ring. Someone told me during the 36-hour live stream playing this that they basically mentioned that to me. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And other than that, I think we're going to get onto the gameplay now for this game. So, first of all, difficulty. Oh my God, is this game difficult? It is the hardest game I've ever played in my life. Not counting those really old school games from the early 80s and 70s and stuff that no one could finish, right? With I don't know, 100 levels and you die on level 3. Discounting those, Sekiro is the hardest game I've ever played. It's insanely abusively difficult. Abusively is the appropriate description for this game. Abusively difficult, torturously difficult. And it would be easier to accept its difficulty if it wasn't by design. If you could just put it down to shitty programming or lazy programming, it would be easier to accept. But the fact is, these games are so unbelievably detailed and intricate, nothing is left to chance. That means these people actually sat there and intentionally planned to torture you. It's an intricate form of torture. And I was saying during the stream, they should actually use this as a form of torture. The CIA should use this as a form of torture, because if that gets uncovered, they can just say, look, we're letting them play Sekiro, mate. But actually, they should force someone to play this game 24/7, especially people who've never played games before, because it's a form of intricate torture. It's like it's rape. It's like getting raped, basically. You're constantly getting raped around every single corner. So it doesn't matter how you're getting fisted. We call this game the fist. It's like getting constantly fisted. I know it's a crude expression, but not that I know what getting fisted is like, but it is like getting fisted, right? It doesn't matter how you're getting fisted, whether it's an enemy, whether it's a boss, whether it's a jumping section, whether it's a puzzle section, you are going to get fisted hard in this game. You beat one enemy that's horrific, and you think, okay, the game's going to let up for a bit. You turn the corner, and then just something will murder you instantly. You'll get shot. You'll be mowed down in a hail of gunfire by multiple assailants on different levels of the map all over the place. And you're thinking, how the hell, how am I supposed to know that's there? And how am I supposed to get past that? You are getting fisted all the time. Then you'll go into a jumping section. Okay, I have to jump up these roofs. You've got a grappling hook. It's an integral part of the game. And as you're jumping up, you're just getting molested by enemies. And there's one comical part when I was getting so pissed off with this game. I'm thinking, you guys are taking the piss. By design, you're making this so fisty from every fucking angle. And as I was saying that, this guy literally out of the sky materialized from above the clouds, doing a kamikaze head first, just flying with his arms like that, screaming, and just landed right in my face, even though I saw him from miles away and I tried to avoid him. I thought, this is a joke. This is a joke. So it is just unbelievably brutally hard. So the first boss I played in this game, in my opinion, was harder than the hardest boss in Elden Ring, which is Malenia, however you pronounce it, who I killed last month. That was really fucking hard, and that is well known as the hardest boss in Elden Ring. The first boss in Sekiro, for me, was harder than the hardest boss in Elden Ring, and people say that boss is really hard in Elden Ring. That's how hard this game is. The interesting thing about it is, if you talk to other people who play these games, what might be the most difficult boss for you is not the most difficult boss for other people, and vice versa. So I talked about this boss, and my best friend in England, he said, yeah, it was really hard, but it wasn't too bad for him. I found that hard to believe. And that's an interesting thing about these games, is certain bosses or even mid-bosses or enemies, some people will find impossible, but others will just breeze through it. And it speaks to the craziness of this game. In order to play it, it's almost like you have to play it with your subconscious. When you're actually using your brain power to work out what's going on and trying to analyze it in a logical way and looking at what's happening and thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to beat it. That's when you fail. It's when you turn into a kind of mindless zombie and you're almost hypnotized by the game, and it's your subconscious is playing the game. That's where things start to go right. It's such a bizarre game. It's so difficult and so intricate. The only way to really get by is to stop thinking and just be completely absorbed by the game, be in the flow state. It's such a bizarre, intricate, torturous, tough, but kind of amazing game. So I have to start with that. It is insanely difficult, and I was hating it. I was saying, who likes this? Who would enjoy this? And honest to God, the game is supposed to be frustrating as hell, But that's countered by the fact that once you actually beat the frustrating section or boss or whatever, or you overcome that obstacle, for however much it was frustrating, you're supposed to get a return of elation or ecstasy or good vibes in the form of your victory, and maybe even more. But in this game, that balance is completely off. The frustration of the game is the lasting impression, and the victory and the elation and the ecstasy is only kind of small compared to the frustration. So, to put it simply, when you spend ages trying to kill a boss, when you finally kill it, frustration is what lingers, and not a sense of achievement. You just feel frustrated because it was far more frustrating than it was fun, and that's how I felt pretty much in the first 26, 27 hours of the game. It was just purely brutal, and I was saying, who likes this shit? And it literally took me about 30 hours to suddenly start liking Sekiro. And man, that's not really a glowing endorsement for the game, is it? You'd have to stay awake for 30 hours non-stop in order to just begin to start enjoying it and not be annoyed as hell. But I kind of had that a bit with Elden Ring, which is the only other From Software game I've played. I do plan to play them all after I finish Sekiro, which you can watch soon on a successive live stream. But it was similar with Elden Ring. I was really annoyed by it in the beginning, and then after about 15 hours or so, I really started to like Elden Ring. But this game took double. It took about 30 hours, and it's actually a shorter game. So I think in order to get the most out of Sekiro, you're probably going to want to go through on a second playthrough, which is just insane. If you compare this to other modern games, people kind of get into it in the first couple of hours. But this took me about 30 hours to start enjoying it because it's so tough and so intricate. And I feel like I haven't scratched the surface, even though the skills in this game and the combat is greatly simplified, although arguably much tougher than other Elden Ring games. It still feels like you don't know what's going on, even after 24 hours of constant play. There's so many small, intricate things. There's things like the experience system, the skills and the skill trees, and the combat arts, which are various kind of different special moves you can do and stuff. And there's so many different skills, which in themselves are like meta games, ways to counter attacks that you might not have had before. It just feels like there's so much in the game that you're just scratching the surface 30 hours in. It's amazing that these things even exist, and it's kind of cool that they're so popular because it's a great check against all the mainstream games where they hold your hand and just make it easy for you. So it's basically incredibly difficult. But after about 27 hours, I think we got to this boss called the Guardian Ape. And we mentioned before how there's this fountainhead, which is where people get eternal life, and that at the bottom, this is where all of these waters have started pooling and stagnating. So you kill this horrible ape, and it's such a cool boss. It's like a real gorilla, but it's gigantic. The way it moves and slaps its hands is so intense and so much fun and just so cool with its nasty straggly hair. It's got this huge blade through its neck, and it's fighting you while the blade is through its neck, and it like farts on you, and which poisons you, and it just throws its shit at you, and it's so much fun to play. It's so intense and crazy. That's when I started liking the game. And then when there's this cool thing, I don't know what it's called, but when the enemy has I think it's posture, and you fuck up its posture by countering and parrying its attacks and not taking much damage yourself. And then when you break its posture, you got a chance for a critical hit. And then the game goes into third person. It was already in third person, but the camera kind of detaches from behind you and gives a dramatic angle, and you do some crazy death blow, or at least do massive damage to it. And when you do that on the Guardian Ape, you grab the katana in its neck and you just pull it down, you rotate it, and its head comes off and it's dead. You think it's dead. And then because it's in these stagnating, life-giving waters, you actually realize it's an immortal, and it comes back to life, and it's holding its head in its hand while its head is severed, and it's like staggering towards you. And then because it can't really see properly, its movement is all kind of creepy and spooky, and just looks weird and distorted and horrible. And it's got this giant centipede in its neck, and you can like pull it out and like try to chop it and stuff. So the centipede obviously was thriving in this festering water of immortal life that was stagnating and then corrupting everything. So that part of the game was just, it was so cool. And when I beat that, I just thought, I suddenly got into it and it all kind of felt worth it. But fuck me, the difficulty curve is insane. From Software games are known to be the most difficult games available today. And I didn't know before I started playing this, but this is known as the most difficult From Software game. And you go onto Reddit and there's all these wankers who say, I completed it in 20 hours. Bullshit, you completed it in 20 hours. On this stream, the kind of people who are helping me, they didn't really spoil it for me that much. They told me where I wanted to go when I asked them, but they weren't backseating like crazy. But when I got stuck, I'd ask people where to go. So even with that, I was still 36 hours into the game and I was only 75% of the way through. And that's when people are explaining like all the skills to me, which were critical to killing these tough bosses. So these people who say they complete it in 20 hours, that's if you're so impatient and incapable of just enjoying something that you're going to watch a YouTube video that tells you everything to do and just follow it line for line. There's no way you could complete this in 20 hours off the bat. Bullshit. Anyone who says that is just chatting nonsense on Reddit. Absolutely. There's so many people like that on Reddit. So I completed in 20 hours. No, you fucking didn't. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. So that game, it will take you like 50 hours to complete probably if you don't use any hints online, I would say, or maybe a bit more. But it is mad hard. But I started enjoying it on that boss. And then the game kind of got cool. And there's a few other mid-bosses I killed, which were really fun. I can't remember, there's some woman in it she was playing like a shamisen or something, actually. And she's wearing a beautiful silk kimono with a kind of old school Japanese hat, whatever it's called. And she was like a psycho bitch. She was talking about her ex-boyfriend and then started blaming me. That was a really cool battle. The graphics were nice. It was very, as I said, the aesthetic of this game looks good. It feels so faithful to old school Japanese lore. And you know all those old school Japanese tattoos you see with the kind of the shinobi or samurai, whatever it is, the guy with the katana, he's fighting some old beast like a giant snake and people have it on tattoos. That kind of stuff is in this game, which is really cool. So all that old mystical Japanese lore is actually playable now in Sekiro, which is really, really nice. And speaking of snakes, there's one of the standout moments is there's a huge snake. I mean, it's as big as like a fucking train, a gigantic train, or bigger, like a freight train, length, width, everything. That's what she said. And you're kind of hiding from it and trying to get away. And it's a menace. It's a kind of thorn in your side and it keeps coming back throughout the game. There's one point you desperately go into this little box and it has a little like curtain on it and it goes up to it and it's looking at you and its eyes glowing. And you realize it's not going to go away. And then someone on the stream said, you've got to stab its eye. And there's actually a prompt to tell you to stab it. And you can stab it in the eye. It goes mad and you still don't kill it. And later on, you see it sleeping. You're really high up. And you can do these cool things where you jump. And if you time it right, there's a prompt on the screen. You press the button. And then when you land, you can kill the enemy. And you land by driving your katana into its eye. And it goes sick and dies. That was such a cool part of the game. That was really, really cool. So this game is like a Japanese tattoo come to life. All that old Japanese art with the samurai battling some weird monster or a snake or a giant carp or a frog. That inspiration is what really made this game. So that's quite cool. But saying that, I would have liked it maybe to be a little bit less a fantasy game, a little bit more real. There's so much crazy fantasy stuff. I think they might have gone a bit too far with it. I think Tenchu had crazy fantasy stuff, but a lot of it just felt like you were a ninja in the Sengoku period just killing people. But this just feels like you're in some fantasy world. It almost feels like Lord of the Rings, but kind of samurai style. But still, it is very, very cool. And yeah, the first boss gave me so much trouble. She was called Lady Butterfly. I mean, it was just abusively hard, insanely hard. And yeah, I have to mention that Lady Butterfly was just one of the absolute worst. And then there's I kind of found the actual mid-bosses and just the random enemies that populate the levels are almost as hard as the bosses or worse. It's like two different games. Fighting the boss, they say it's like a dance. It's like a rhythm action game. You're kind of blocking and parrying and moving, and there's unblockable hits, which means you have to jump or dodge. So it's kind of like a rhythm action game. But then when you fight the regular enemies, it's completely different mechanic. It's like two different games. So after you've conditioned yourself to attack bosses by habit, then going and fighting regular enemies it feels like a different game, and then you get the buttons wrong because you're so conditioned to fighting the bosses, which require a different play style. It's so goddamn hard, man. And some of the regular enemies, God, they were hard. So there's kind of samurais who just wear these kind of long blue robes, and they look kind of nerdy and gaunt, but they're well hard to kill. And then there's this one bitch, I know, she's kind of like a mummy, got all these things wrapped around her face and a massive musket, and she's like dodging around, and she'll just grab you and put the gun in your face, boom, at point blank range, shoot you. Or she'll do a few moves, dodge, and then just get the gun out and just shoot you. It's right in your face, shoot you. Doesn't need any range at all. God, that character was annoying, man. And there's certain items you can only get in one place, as is the way in From Software games, where if you miss the item, you're kind of fucked. So there's a few times someone told me what to get, and I'm happy they told me. There's something called an iron umbrella in this shooting section where there's people on cliffs just shooting you, just molesting you, fisting you constantly. There's nowhere to go. If you don't have this iron umbrella, you're kind of fucked. You pop it out and you can just walk around. All the bullets just fly off you. If you don't know where that is, I don't even know how you do that section. I've spoke to a lot of people who gave up playing this game, and most people gave up on the Guardian Ape. I didn't find the Guardian Ape that bad, but my friends did, and most people gave up around there. But man, it's a pro game, and it's like this balletic dance, and there's no leveling up. So you basically just have to beat it with skill, and you can't summon people to help you like you can in other games. And I like that about this game. You can't summon anyone to help. You can't just level up to get OP and then come back to the enemy that was giving you trouble. You just have to beat it with skill. So I hope if there's a sequel, they keep it the same. Although I don't think they will, because Elden Ring was so popular because it was the most accessible one yet. But I hope that they stick to their guns. If anyone's going to stick to their guns, it's these motherfuckers, because they became successful by sticking to their guns. And I do hope in a sequel they keep it this way, where it's rock hard. So I can't wait to go back into it. And I would probably give it a second playthrough, because I feel like I'm just scratching the surface near the end. So you can go back into it, and I think the enemies get harder. But it's an amazing game. It's a cool game. It's a game about samurais. It's hard as nails. It doesn't hold your hand. There's going to be such an amazing sense of achievement if and when you finish the game. There's no harder game than this. So if you beat it, you are the man. And once you get used to it, eventually, overcoming the bosses, you feel like the absolute don. And it feels like a real sense of achievement because you had to work so hard to do it. So we're about 75% of the way through. Make sure you stay tuned to this channel, because we will be finishing the game pretty soon. Probably there's another 15 hours left, 10, 15 hours. I'm looking forward to it. The graphics are kind of not that impressive by modern standards, but the art style is amazing. The sound is just amazing. The gameplay is fucking good. It's very intricate, very deep. The character designs are cool. There's so many different characters, and it's a fucking top-notch game, man. There's nothing like it. I've never played anything like it, and it just, if anything, it stands out just for being so difficult and so intricately tough, intricately brutal. So there you go, Sekiro. I got to give it a 10. I mean, 10 out of 10 feels a bit weird because it's so abusive, but you have to give it a 10. There's nothing like it. It's such a brave, creative statement in a market where everyone's just making mainstream trash, which is just as easy as possible to pick up. So Sekiro is like nothing I've ever played before. Hardest game I've ever played. Really tough and really cool. So that's my review of Sekiro. Thank you everyone for joining me on that journey. It was really, really fun, really intense. 36 hours. Wow. And I felt killing some of the bosses like Genichiro and the Lady Butterfly, whatever her name is, and the Guardian Ape was so fun. There's a part later where you go into a cave, there's this dirty ape kind of pressing up against the wall, and I thought, that's not the same ape, because it looked kind of small. I told you the perspective is all kind of off in this game, and you get close and then he leans backward really creepily, and it's the same one you just fucking fought, like the second phase where he's got his head in his hand. And then when you take him out, his friend comes, his girlfriend comes, and there's this brown ape, and you have to kill two of them at the same time. That was crazy. I kind of found a way to do that in the end, but yeah, that was a great moment as well. So you can see I'm just rambling about it because it was an exciting experience, and all within 36 hours. I feel I've never really done anything like that before. So there you go. Sekiro is awesome. Jupiter says, man, Johnny, you've really been on your video game vibe strong the last few months. I have, because it's just, yeah, if I can do that for 36 hours, what else can you do for 36 hours without sleep and actually enjoy it? Well, Even more shagging would be pretty good, but 36 hours of shagging, just like you learn in this game. So some of these things where it's just supposed to be heavenly and take you to ecstasy could actually be hell. But I think there's nothing I'd rather do than play video games for 36 hours if I have to stay up for 36 hours. Speaking of which, the next one, are we going to stay up for 36 hours again? We're going to do 48 hours. I think we'll do a 24. We got to pace ourselves with these long streams. Jupiter says, we used to watch ourselves and vibe till dying. Yes, very you certainly are a fan of the show, if you know what that means. Thank you. Yeah, Internet Tough Guy says, this isn't your grandpa's video game. Yes, indeed. Okay, Brad W, I see you in the comments. You from Software's got issues, man. Yeah, it's an abusive game. But it's addictive. So thank you, everyone. I got to go. I got things to do. So thank you very much for tuning in today. I have been Johnny Massacre. And I tell you what. Oh, by the way, if you do want to donate, please feel free to donate. We need to reset the donation goal. We are now into the month of April, so we're going to reset that. But please feel free to donate. Streamlabs.com/Johnny Massacre. If you're feeling generous, it enables me to make these videos and do these live streams. Thank you, everybody, and I will see you later.